Okay, Rabbi Isai, let's get going. We are on DAF YOMI today in MENACHOS, and just to get our bearings of where we are, we saw machlokes yesterday between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim. The Mishnah says that if a Kohen did not do the yitzika, which is the pouring of the oil onto the mincha, b'di'evet it's still kosher, even though the Torah prescribes that the Kohanim should do the avoda, but if the Kohen did not do the yitzika, the pouring of the oil, but a zor, a non-Kohen, did instead, b'di'evet it's still kosher. That's according to the Chachamim, and Reb Shimon, although not stated in our Mishnah, but the Gemara brings a brisa from Reb Shimon says that no, that's ma'akev, which is the term for that if it's not done, then it ruins the mincha. The mincha is pasul. If a Kohen didn't do it and a non-Kohen did it instead, it's totally pasul. So the Gemara had asked the question, where did the Chachamim get it from and where does Reb Shimon get it from? Where did the Chachamim know that b'di'evet it's kosher if it's done by a non-Kohen? So the Gemara says that the Chachamim have a pasuk, v'yatzak aleh hashemen v'nasan aleh halevona, that he shall pour on it oil and do all of the other things, and then it says vehevi'ah el bnei Aharon hakohanim, and he shall then bring it to the sons of Aaron the Kohen v'kamatz misham, and then he shall do the kemitza. Now he is referring to the Kohen, but you see that the Kohen is only introduced into the process of doing the mincha right before the kemitza. So the Chachamim learned that the only thing that necessarily has to be done by a Kohen is from the kemitza and onwards. But stuff that's before the kemitza does not necessarily have to be done by a Kohen. And Reb Shimon, so now the question is, so what does Reb Shimon do with that pasuk? So the Gemara had said, Reb Shimon uses the word Kohen in that pasuk and appends it both to the information that comes after it and the information that comes before it. So even though the word Kohen appears in the center of the pasuk, you attach it to the actions that come before and the actions that come after, and therefore Reb Shimon says you necessarily need to have a Kohen involved in every step of the mincha process, including the yitzika, the pouring of the oil. So the Gemara now says at the top line, V'savar Reb Shimon mikra nidrash lefanav v'la'acharav. You mean to tell me that according to Reb Shimon, he looks at a word in the pasuk and allows you to append it to both the information before and the information after? V'hatanya, let me show you a brisa where that's not the case with Reb Shimon. Because it says, V'lokach ha-kohen midam ha-chatas be'etz va'o, v'nasan al karnos ha-mizbeach. The Torah, in talking about a chatas sacrifice, an animal chatas, it says, he shall take from the blood of the chatas with his finger. Now, it's important to note that every time the Torah says his finger, it's referring to the finger on his forefinger, the index finger on his right hand. And then it says, V'nasan al karnos ha-mizbeach, and he shall place the blood with his right finger on the corners of the altar. So, the first thing the brisa says is be'etz ba'o v'lokach. You append the word be'etz ba'o to the previous verb in the pasuk of he shall take the blood. Melamed shelo tehi kabbalah elo biyamin. This teaches me that when the Kohen does the Kabbalah, the receiving of the blood from the animal's neck right after the slaughter, it has to be done with the hand that is used be'etz ba'o, which is the right hand. You must necessarily have the Kabbalah with the right hand. V'nasan be'etz ba'o v'nasan, melamed shelo tehi nesina elo biyamin. And then you take the word be'etz ba'o and not only append it to the first verb in the pasuk, but also the latter verb in the pasuk of placement on the altar. And that tells me that the placement on the corners of the altar also must be done only with the right hand. So that's the Tanakama. He says basically the word be'etz ba'o can be appended to the verb that is at the beginning of the pasuk and appended to the verb that is at the end of the pasuk. But Amar Reb Shimon v'chi nemar yad b'kabbalah, hol v'lo nemar yad b'kabbalah, kibel b'smol kasha. And Reb Shimon disagrees. He says, no, the first verb is not appendable to the word be'etz ba'o. It appears all the way at the beginning of the pasuk. So what are you doing trying to connect it to a word that only appears later in the middle of the pasuk? And therefore, according to Reb Shimon, while I agree that the nesina, the placement on the altar, has to be done with the right hand, I disagree regarding the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah does not have to be done with the right hand. What do you see from here? V'amar Abaye b'mikra nidrash lefanav v'la'acharav k'miflagi. And Abaye had explained explicitly that this is the machlokas between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon. According to the Tanakama, you can take a word that's in the middle of the pasuk and append it to the verbiage before and the verbiage after. But according to Reb Shimon, you cannot append the word be'etzba'o to verbiage that comes earlier in the pasuk. So you see, this directly contradicts the way you're trying to explain Reb Shimon presently. So Ella, high time under Reb Shimon. Vehevi'ah, vav mosef al inyan rishon. But really, this is the reason of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon's reason is because when the Torah talks about he shall bring it to the sons of Aaron, even though that verbiage comes after the previous statements talking about Yitzika, etc., nonetheless, the letter Vav is there to tell you that it is appended to the previous actions. Vehevi'ah, and he shall bring it. So that teaches me, that extra letter Vav teaches me that normally while you don't append the middle verbiage to earlier verbiage in the pasuk, here you do. The Savar Reb Shimon Vav Mosef al inyan rishon ela me'ata. Well, if that's the case, let me ask you another question. This dichsiv v'shachades ben habakar v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron hakohanim es adam v'zaraku es adam mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna melamed al shchita shekshera bizar. Now, the Torah talks about the process of bringing an animal sacrifice. It says, he shall slaughter, and then the Bnei Aharon shall bring the animal as a korban. What you see from here is that because the action of slaughter is mentioned before the sons of Aharon are introduced in the pasuk, that shchita can be done by a non-kohen. But notice that the word vihikrivu, they shall bring as a korban, is with the letter vav also in this pasuk. And if you're telling me that the letter Vav makes the word Kohanim to be appended to the earlier verbiage, Reb Shimon, Vav Mosef al inyan rishon, shchita hachanami bizar tehi pesula. Then why, according to Reb Shimon, don't we say that shchita must necessarily be done by a Kohen, according to that same argument? So the Gemara answers, Shaini hasam da'amar kra v'samach v'shachat, masmicha bizarim av shchita bizarim. So the answer is because you have an earlier pasuk which talks about smicha, placing the hands down on the animal. And just like smicha can be done by a non-kohen, so too shchita, which there was the verb immediately that comes after smicha, that teaches me it can be done by a non-kohen. In other words, even though you have the letter vav, which would normally append the kohanim to the earlier verbiage of shchita, but over here you have a conflicting imperative, which is that the verb v'samach comes immediately before the verb of v'shachat, and that tells me that just like non-kohanim can do smicha, so too non-kohanim can do shchita. So ima smicha b'ba'alim av shchita b'ba'alim. So the Gemara says, well, that by that argument, you should say that smicha, while it can be done by non-kohanim, it's limited to the bringer of the korban himself or herself. Why then don't we say that the only person who's allowed to do shchita is the bringer of the korban, just like smicha? So hahula matzis amart kal v'chomer umazrika deikar kapar lo baya ba'olim shchita delavikar kapar lo kol shekain. So the Gemara says you can't make such an argument based on the following logic. If the zrika, which is the sprinkling of the blood which affects the final atonement, does not have to be done by the bringer himself, then surely shchita, which is only an ancillary prefatory act of the bringing of the korban of the kapara, surely does not have to be done by the bringer himself. But maybe you'll make a counter argument, which is, it's one thing to say that the bringer doesn't do the zrika if the bringer is a non-kohen, because the Torah requires that only kohanim do the zrika. But maybe I'll make the argument that since shchita can be done by a non-kohen, maybe it necessarily has to be done by the bringer, since it can be a non-kohen. So maybe you can make that a counter argument. So the Gemara says, no, Goli Rachmana biyom HaKippurim v'shachat es parachatos asher lo michlal tishchita ba'alma lo ba'inin ba'alim. So to counter that, in other words, we're back to our question, why don't we argue that shchita can only be done by the ba'alim, by the bringer of the korban himself? And for that, the Gemara says, because we have an explicit pasuk written by the Yom Kippur Avoda. By the Yom Kippur Avoda, it says that the Kohen Gadol shall slaughter the sin offering that belongs to him. And there the Torah makes a point of saying that only he is allowed to shecht that sin offering. But what we learn from there is that it's localized only to that situation where the bringer of the korban must do the slaughtering himself. That teaches me that in everywhere else in the Torah, the slaughter can be done by someone other than the bringer of the korban. Okay? Now, so that concludes that discussion. The conclusion of this discussion is we've defended the Chachamim's position as why they say that Yitzika b'di'evet, if it's done by a non-Kohen, is still kosher, and we've defended Reb Shimon's position, who says that that Yitzika must dafka be done by a Kohen, and if it's not, it's possible. Now we have a statement by Rav. We're going to see two.
Professional, no?
No. Now we're going to see Rav. Now we're going to see two statements of Rav today. Shchita can be done by anyone who knows how to shecht. What does that mean, professional? Professional? Show me is a rabbi a profession? A shochet is also not a profession, right? You learn how to do it and you do it. That's all. Amar Rav, kol makom shenemar Torah v'chuka eina ela la'akev. So Rav makes a sweeping statement, and he says that anywhere you find in the Torah the words Torah and chukah, those words are code words that indicate that if it's not done exactly this way, then the whole mitzvah is pasul and it has to be redone. So So the thinking, when you first look at Rav's statement, it sounds like he's saying you need both words. If you have both words, Torah and chukah or chok, then that indicates that if it must be done just so, and if not, it's pasul. What's the example? Parshas chukas, zos chukas haTorah, the preparation of the para aduma. You have to follow the exact protocol, and if you deviate even with one thing, the para aduma is pasul. So the Gemara now says, "V'harei nazir deloksiva be el Torah v'omar Rav tenufa benazir ma'akeves." So I'm going to ask you a question. How can you say that you need both words? I know that by the nazir it only has the word Torah, but it doesn't write chuk. It just says zos toras hanazir. It doesn't say the word chukah by nazir. And yet we know that there's a halacha by nazir that is ma'akev, that must be done just so, and that is the waving of one of the karbanos of the nazir. So how do you respond to that? So shiny hasam keven dichsiv kain yaaseh keman dichsiva behu chukah dami. So the answer is that even though it doesn't say the word chok by nazir, it nevertheless talks about it has the words kain yaaseh, those two extra words. So shall he do. So shall he do is added emphasis as if the Torah had written the word chok, to tell you that if it's not done just so, it's ma'akev. But one second, harei toda deloksiva be el Torah v'nosan u'utnan rather arba shebetoda ma'akvin ze'ezeh. What about the korban toda? The korban toda does not have the word chukah. All it has is the word Torah, and yet in the pasuk. And yet, we are taught in the Mishnah that the 4 different kinds of bread that have to be brought with the korban toda are ma'akev, so that if you leave out even one kind of bread, you've ruined the korban toda and it has to be done all over again. Why should it be ma'akev if we don't have the word chukah? Shiny toda de iskash lenazir, yichsiv al zevach todas shalamav, v'omar mar shalamav l'rabo shalmei nazir. So the answer is because the Torah scripturally connects the laws of the Toda to the laws of the Nazir. Because when the Torah talks about the Toda, it talks about Zevach Toda Shalamav, and we learned that Shlamim is referring to the Shlamim of the Nazir. And so since the Torah makes reference to a Nazir in terms of Toda, we know that the laws are connected. So if we know that something is Ma'akev for a Nazir, we know that it can be ma'akev for the korban toda as well, even though it doesn't have the requisite double language of Torah and chukah. V'harei mitzor deloksiv be'el Torah tznan arba minin sheba mitzor ma'akvin ze'ezeh. What about the purification process of the mitzorah? There, the Torah only writes zos tihiyeh toras hamitzorah. The word Torah is written, but not the word chukah. And yet, we learn in the Mishnah that all 4 ingredients that accompany the purification process for the mitzorah are ma'akev. If you leave out one of them, it's that you've ruined the process. The 4 things, by the way, are the cedar wood, the scarlet string, the hyssop brush, and the birds. If you leave out even one of those ingredients, so you've ruined the purification process. Why should that be if the word chukah is not written? So the Gemara says, "Shiny hasam keven dichsiv zos tihiyeh toras hamitzorah kaman dichsiv bechukah dami." The answer is this added emphatic language. It doesn't just say zos toras hamitzorah, it says zos tihiyeh toras hamitzorah. That added verbiage is almost like it's written the word chok. It must be just so. And if not, it's ma'akev. V'harei yom ha'kippurim deloksiv be el chukah. Utnan Shnei Seirei Yom Kippur Ma'akvin Zeh. But now let's look at Yom Kippur. It says by Yom Kippur the word chok, because it says V'hayisa lachem lechukas olam. It shall be for you as an eternal statute, as an eternal chok. But the word Torah is absent in the verbiage for Yom Kippur, and yet we know that there's something that's ma'akev about Yom Kippur. If you take one of the two goats that has to be brought on Yom Kippur is for whatever reason is lost or becomes pasul, you have to replace the second goat. So there is something that's ma'akev about the avoda of Yom Kippur, even without both words. So ela o Torah o chuka. So the Gemara says you're right. What we have to modify our understanding of Rav's statement. Rav did not mean to say that you need both words. You need either word, either the word Torah or the word chukah. So we can discard all of our previous answers based on our misunderstanding of Rav. And our new understanding of Rav is that either the word Torah or the word chukah tells you that something in that mitzvah can be ma'akev. But one second, v'harei shar karbanos tichsiv b'hu Torah v'lo ma'akvi. So the Gemara says, but wait a minute. We have our generic pasuk by all karbanos, which has the word Torah. And you can't tell me that by all karbanos there's something that's ma'akev, like we have the ideas. It's that pasuk that we've quoted so many times throughout Maseches Zvachim, Zos HaTorah la'ola lamincha v'lachatas v'la'asham, where the Torah uses the word Torah, and then it addresses all of the karbanos. So, and yet we see that it doesn't have to be just so, right, by all karbanos. So the Gemara says, Torah baya chuka v'chuka lo baya Torah. So the Gemara says, you're right. Now we have to modify our understanding of Rav one more time. If you have the word Torah by itself, that's not enough to tell you that it's ma'akev. You have to have the word chukah as well. But if you have the word chukah and you don't have the word Torah, like we have by Yom Kippur, then it is ma'akev. So the Gemara says, V'hatorah v'chukah ka'amar. But one second, then Rav's statement doesn't make any sense. According to that, what Rav means to say is, anytime you find the word chukah in the Torah, it's ma'akev. What does he have to say the word Torah at all? If that's, you're making this modified understanding of Rav, but you're explaining it in a way that the words don't fit your explanation. He should have then just said the word chukah tells you that it's ma'akev. What does the word Torah have to do with it? So the Gemara says, Hachi kamar, afal gav dichsiv Torah, iksiva chukah in v'ilolo. What Rav really means to say is that the word Torah, you might have thought, is an emphatic statement that it must be just so. So comes along Rav to tell you it like this. No. If the word Torah is accompanied by the word chukah, then you're right. But if it's not accompanied by the word chukah, then it's not teaching anything about being ma'akev, but the word chukah alone is the critical, that's the critical word that tells you that something about this mitzvah is ma'akev. So now, what does this whole discussion have to do with Maseches Menachos? Now that we've clarified that according to Rav, the word chukah in a pasuk tells you that process is ma'akev, here's my next question. V'arei mincha dichsiv b'chukah, v'amar Rav kol makam shehechzir akasu b'toras mincha eno elo la'akev. Hechzer in lo, hechzer lo. So my next question is then, according to this, Rav is contradicting himself. Because by Menachos, the word chukah is used in the pasuk. As it says in the pasuk, Chok olam l'dorosechem. It shall be an eternal statute, like the word chok, right? Chok or chukah, it's the same word. And yet Rav tells me that the only protocols by Menachos that are ma'akev are the protocols that the Torah repeats. But if there are protocols that the Torah does not repeat, those protocols are not ma'akev. Now, according to you, Rav, the word chok is written by Menachos. So why don't you say that every protocol by Menachos is ma'akev, according to your shita? The Gemara answers, Shaini hasam dechiksiva chuka a'achila ksiva. So the answer is that the word chok that's written in the context of Menachos is in the context of the eating of the mincha. Now, we all know that if the Kohanim do not eat the shirayim, of the shiorei hamincha, the leftover flour of the mincha, you still can get atonement from that mincha. So it's not possible to suggest that the word chukah, written in the context of achila, is teaching about being ma'akev, because achila is never ma'akev. And therefore, that's how I know that the word chukah that's written by Menachos is not teaching about being ma'akev, and that's why Rav is not contradicting himself. Therefore, he says the only times that the protocol is ma'akev by Menachos is where the Torah repeats itself. But wait a minute. V'harei lechem hapanim dechiksiva chuka achila ksiva utnan shnei sedorim ma'akvin ze ezeh shnei bezichim ma'akvin ze ezeh hasedorim va'bezichim ma'akvin ze ezeh. But according to that argument, why then do we say by the lechem hapanim that the protocols of the showbread are ma'akev each other? If I have one half of the loaves ruined, then I have to redo the other half of the loaves. If I have the frankincense ruined, I have to redo the bread. If I have the bread ruined, I have to redo the frankincense. Why should that be? It's based on the word chukah. But the chukah that's written by the lechem hapanim is also only written in the context of eating the showbread, not preparing the showbread. And according to what you just said, if it's written in the context of eating, it's not teaching me anything about being ma'akev. So ella kol hecha dechsiva achila akula milsa ksiva shiny hasam da omakra migirsa umishamna geres v'shemen ma'akvin ve'in dover acher ma'akev. So the Gemara says, here's my final answer. In reality, we have to retract. In reality, when you find the word chukah or chok according to Rav, it's ma'akev, even if it's written in the context of eating. Why? Because if it's written in any context, it's reflective of all of the protocols of the mitzvah. Even though it's only written in the context of eating, but it's reflective of all the protocols. That's the way I modify. And that's why by lechem hapanim, the protocols are ma'akev each other. Why by menachos are the protocols not ma'akev each other unless the Torah actually repeats the law? The answer is because the Torah adds for added emphasis migirsa umishamna when it comes to the menachos. That only for geres, which is the flour of the mincha, and the shemen, which is the oil, does the Torah add for added emphasis that it must be done exactly according to the law. And if not, it's no good. So that teaches me that any other law having to do with the menachos is not ma'akev. And therefore, despite the fact that the Torah uses the word chok, I have an overriding exegetical text which teaches me that only when it comes to the flour and the oil is it ma'akev, but other protocols by the menachos are not ma'akev. Now, gufa. Let's go back to Rav's statement. Amar Rav, kol makom shehechzer lecha akosu b'toras mincha eno elo la'akev. So Rav had said what? That only those protocols where the Torah repeats itself by menachos is that protocol ma'akev. But if it only is written once, it's not ma'akev. Ushmuel amar geres v'shemen ma'akvin ve'in dover acher ma'akev. So Shmuel disagrees and he says no. Only when it comes to the adding of the flour and the oil do we say that that must be just so. But anything else having to do with the mincha, let's say the waving and the hagasha, the bringing close of the komets to the mizbeach, that's not ma'akev. But 1 second, says the Gemara, V'li Shmuel afagav detana beikra lo ma'akvale. So 1 second, Shmuel, are you suggesting that you disagree with Rav's statement that when the Torah repeats itself, it's not ma'akev? Then why would the Torah repeat itself? The question essentially to Shmuel is, then what's wrong with Rav's argument? Isn't the repeated verbiage in the Torah coming to teach you something? According to you, what is it coming to teach? So Ella kol hecha detana beikra vaday ma'akva v'hacha b'melo kumtso bikumtso kamiflagi. So the Gemara says you're right. Shmuel has to submit to Rav's argument that if the Torah is going to repeat itself, it's coming for added emphasis to tell you that that protocol is ma'akev. So what is the one argument between Rav and Shmuel? The argument is on one specific issue. And that is, we know from the Torah that the Kohen is supposed to take a fistful of flour, that's called the komets, that fistful, and he places that in a utensil, and that's what eventually is placed on the fire on the altar. Now, he's supposed to scoop it up, he's supposed to do kemitza. What if he scoops it up with the utensil that has the same amount of volume as his fist? Is that kosher or not? So according to one, it's kosher. According to the other, it's not kosher. And that's the only machlokus between Rav and Shmuel. That what do we learn? Detanya melokumtso bekumtso shelo yasa mida lekomets. Rav savar hanami tana bekra. So as the Brisa says, that it's necessary that you do the kemitza with your hand. You can't do it with the utensil. And we learn that from the words melokumtso. It has to be a fistful of flour. You can't take the same volume in a utensil. So Rav says, Rav Savar Hanami Tana Bekra. Rav says that also is ma'akev, that if you do it with a utensil, you've ruined the mitzvah. And how do I know that? Because the pasuk repeats that requirement. Where does the Torah repeat it? First it says v'kamatz. he shall take a fistful. And then later on, at the time of the Miluim, when they dedicated the Mishkan, the Torah writes that Aharon offered the mincha and he did the act of kemitza. He filled his fist with flour. So that's a repetition of the act of kemitza, and that repetition shows you that that protocol is ma'akev. Ushmuel doros mishalo yalfina. And Shmuel says, I agree that the Torah repeated it, but here this is a special case. The Torah repeated it in a non-recursive historical event. In other words, that was a one-time event, that time of the Miluim. And you can't learn for all posterity halachos of menachos from one-time events that are recorded in the Torah. That's Shmuel's shita, and he says, since the Torah is talking about a one-time event of the Miluim, you can't derive halacha for all posterity about menachos. V'lo yalev Shmuel doros misha. But one second, how can you say that Shmuel holds that you can't derive halacha from one-time events in the Torah? V'hatnan kli halach mekachen es halach umidas yavesh mekachen es hayavesh ve'ein kli halach mekachen es hayavesh v'lo midas yavesh mekachen es halach. Look at the following Mishnah. The Mishnah says that utensils that are meant for liquid measure sanctify only those things that are liquid, and utensils that are meant for dry measure sanctify only dry goods. But if I take a utensil that is meant for liquids and I put dry goods in it, or vice versa, the contents are not sanctified by that kli. V'omar Shmuel lo shanu elamidos avol mizrakos mekadshin. And Shmuel said that's only true by measuring cups. By measuring cups. But if you have a bowl that's meant to be used in the avoda itself, then it will sanctify something that it was not meant for. And how do I know this? Shnehem meleim soles. As it says by the Chanukas HaMizbeach, when the Nesiim were brought forth their sacrifices, we have a recursive pasuk. That pasuk says that each one of the Nesiim took a bowl and filled it with soles, with fine flour. Now, a bowl, a mizrak, is normally used for dam. It's normally used for liquid, for blood. And therefore, according to that argument, to the argument of the Braisa, you should say that since a mizrak is meant for liquid, it should not sanctify the flour. And yet we see that it did sanctify the flour. So therefore, Shmuel says, what you see from that is that the Braisa was talking about measuring cups. But if it's not a measuring cup, but rather it's something that's meant to be used in the avoda itself, even though it's meant for liquids, it will still sanctify dry goods. So the Gemara says, but wait a minute, that's a one-time event. That's a one-time historical event, the Chanukas HaMizbech. So how can Shmuel derive halacha from there if you tell me that according to Shmuel you don't derive halacha from one-time historical events? So the Gemara answers, Shiny Hassan, the Tanabei Kra, Trace our Zimnin. The answer is that Shmuel will agree, even though normally you can't derive halacha from his one-time historical events, but when the Torah writes it 12 times, then you can derive halacha from it. The fact that the Torah wrote it so many times, Shnehem Meleim Soles, right? All of them were filled, all of the bowls were filled with soles, right? To 12 times, then even though it's a one-time event, you can still derive halacha from it. Now, Amalei Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav. So now we know Rav's halacha, that anytime the Torah repeats something by menachos, it's ma'akev, but if it doesn't repeat it, it's not ma'akev. So v'harei hagasha detana bakra v'lo ma'akva. But one second, what about hagasha? Hagasha is the act of bringing the komets in a kli and touching it to the mizbeach. There the Torah says it twice, and yet it's not ma'akev. We know it's not ma'akev. So man tanabe, where does the Torah write it twice, first of all? Dichsiv, zos toras hamincha hakreva b'nei Aaron lifnei Hashem. Because it says, this shall be the law of the mincha, bring it close. So you see that that's in addition to where the Torah originally writes hagasha. So you see that the Torah writes it twice. So the Gemara says, no, says Rav, you don't understand. That's not what the function of that pasuk is. That second pasuk is not telling you to do hagasha. That second pasuk is telling you where on the mizbeach you do the hagasha. So it's not repeating old information. It's providing you with new information. And therefore, it's not just repeating it to tell you it's ma'akev. It's repeating it because it's giving you new information. The mizbeach is a big thing. Where are you supposed to touch the kli to the mizbeach? That's what this pasuk is telling you. And it says, Lifnei Hashem. in front of God. The Tanya, Lifnei Hashem, because it says in the pasuk, you shall bring it in front of God. So now you have a mizbeach. What side of the mizbeach is in front of God? What part of the mizbeach? What side of the mizbeach is in front of God? Yes, the west side. How do I know that? Because everything that you go, you're always going westward as you walk into the temple. So the side of the mizbeach that is facing the heichal is the west side. So if the Torah says bring it to the mizbeach in front of God, that would imply bringing it to the west side. So yachol b'marav tamul omer el pnei hamizbeach. But on the other hand, the pasuk also says bring it to the face of the mizbeach. What side of the altar is its face? No.
South side.
The south side. Why is it the south side? Because where do the Kohanim walk up the ramp?
Aliyah.
Where do they go up to the ramp? That's the face. That's the front of the mizbech where the Kohanim go up to it. So where is that? The ramp is on the south side. So the pasuk contradicts itself. On the one hand, it seems to say you shall bring the mincha, the komets, to the west side. The other pasuk seems to imply that you're supposed to bring it to the south side. So how do you reconcile this contradiction? So el pnei hamizbeach yachol b'daram tamal lifnei Hashem can't be the south side because it says lifnei Hashem. So haketzad magisha bekeren dromis ma'aravis keneged chudash shel keren v'dayo. So the Tanakhama says simple: bring it to the southwest corner, touch it to the southwest corner, and therefore you're fulfilling both lifnei Hashem and el pnei hamizbeach. So Rabbi Eliezer disagrees. And he says, Yachol yagishan l'ma'arava shel keren o l'drama shel keren. You might think that you can place it either on the west side of the corner or the south side of the corner. So Amart, no. Kol makom she'ata motzei shtei mikros echad mekayim atzmo mekayim chavero v'echad mekayim atzmo u'mevatel es chavero manichen es shemekayim atzmo u'mevatel chavero v'tovsen es shemekayim atzmo mekayim chavero. So he says, let me tell you a general rule. Let's say you have two psukim, pasuk A and pasuk B. Pasuk A says to do one thing, pasuk B says to do something totally different. So if you can do what's in pasuk A and that action completely negates pasuk B, or you can do what's written in pasuk B and you can reconcile it with pasuk A, even though that action seems to contradict it, but you can reconcile it, so then it's better to do the latter than to do the former. When you can do an action in B, which can be reconciled with A, better to do that than to do A, which cannot be reconciled with B. That's the general rule that Rabbi Eliezer tells us. Now, let's apply it to our case. Shekeshata omer lifnei Hashem b'marav batalta el pnei hamizbeach b'daram. Ucheshata omer el pnei hamizbeach b'daram kiyamta lifnei Hashem. So he says like this: if you were to touch the komets to the west side, you would completely negate the Torah's statement that it has to be to the face of the Mizbeach. But if you touch it to the south side, you could still fulfill the mandate that it has to be Lifnei Hashem. Now how's that? So Vehecha Kiyamta, Amar Rav Ashi Kasavar Haitana Kule Mizbeach Batzafam. So Rav Ashi says it's because Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion, now we've seen this machlokas in Zvachim before, exactly how did they position the Mizbeach vis-a-vis its parallelism to the Heichal. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, the entire Mizbeach was shifted into the north part, the north half, the north hemisphere of the temple courtyard, such that when I'm standing at the south side of the Mizbeach and I turn to the left, my face is directly opposite the Heichal. And therefore, by touching it to the south side, it is Lifnei Hashem, because I'm exactly parallel to the entrance of the Heichal on the south side. And that's why Rabbi Eliezer says you can touch it to the south side and everything is fine. You don't have to worry about corners. Just touch it to the south side and you've fulfilled both El Pnei HaMizbeach and Lifnei Hashem. But that's only if you hold like Rabbi Eliezer, who says that the Mizbeach was positioned all the way in the north. The Chachamim disagree, and they say the Mizbeach was positioned further south, and therefore if you're standing on the south side, you're not Lifnei Hashem. And that's why they had a different solution.
But how far south?
Well,
if it was far enough south that you'd miss the entrance, then...
But that's, if you look at the diagram, that's precisely what we're saying. Okay, so Maskif La Rav Huna, Hare Melach Delotana Bekra Uma Akvebe. So now Rav Huna asks another question. And he says, now wait a minute. Let's talk about salt for a second. We know that you're supposed to add salt to every korban and to every mincha. And yet the Torah does not repeat that by menachos. And yet there's a Tana who holds that it's ma'akev. The Tanya, bris melach oilam hu, the Torah calls salt an eternal covenant. So, and what do we learn from those words? Shetehei bris amura b'melach divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This teaches me that every covenant has to involve salt. That it should never be, there should never be a cessation of salt from the karbanos. And Reb Shimon Oimer Nemer Kan Bris Melech Olam, who Benemar Lahal and Bris Kunas Olam. Kashem Shi Efshel Karbanos below Kahuna, Kachi Efshel Karbanos below Melech. Reb Shimon seems to say the same thing. In other words, they both hold that salt is ma'akev. It's just a question of how you see that. Reb Yehuda sees it from the words bris itself, that it's an something, it has eternality, it must always be done. And Reb Shimon says, no, I connect the word bris to the Kohanim, because it also says the word bris by the Kohanim. So just like you must always have Kohanim doing the avoda, you must always have salt on the Mizbech. But the point is that both of them hold that melach is ma'akev, salt is ma'akev. So how do you reconcile that? The Torah doesn't repeat it by menachos. According to you, Rav, why is it ma'akev? So Amar Rav Yosef, Rav ketana di dan svirle, da Amar lo molach kasher. So the answer is because Rav holds like our Tana. I grant you that in that brisa, both Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon hold that salt is ma'akev. But our Tana, that we learned yesterday, holds that salt is not ma'akev. If you did not put on salt, b'di'evet, it's still kosher. So you see, it's a machlokes tanoim, and Rav holds like that Tana. Since the Torah did not repeat it by menachos, it's not ma'akev. And we'll hold it here for today. Have a wonderful day.